hilarious.
Oh.
Yes, it is.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's 1:30 and I'm declare the February 2016 Finance meeting open. Welcome councillors back as well as the many members of the public here in the public forum today, as well as our online viewers. First item on the agenda is to call for apologies. And I have an apology, or will have an apology for Councillor Green, who has to leave at 5 o'clock. Are there any other apologies?
I need to leave at 5 as well.
Okay.
They're not apologies though, are they? We're just indicating we need to.
All right, also move. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Also take this opportunity to welcome David Bryant, who's sitting alongside me, who is our new GM Corporate Manager. This is David's first official meeting, having joined the organisation earlier this year, as well as Tracy Musty, who's standing there, who is our new financial officer. All right, so confirmation of the agenda. Before I ask for confirmation of the agenda, I'd like to move the item number 13, which is the asset analysis on Whaiwhakariki land. I'd like to seek approval to move that to above item 8, which is before the 10-year monitoring report. Are there any other changes to the agenda? Okay, thank you, Councillor Mallett. Any other changes to the agenda? Councillor Mallett has moved. If there is no discussion, those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Declaration of interest. Are there any declarations of interest?
Yes, Chair. I will excuse myself from item 15, which is the legal services contract, and I have excluded myself from previous discussions over the last 11 years where it came to discussion around appointment of legal counsel.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any other declarations of interest? Move that they be recorded. We now have the public forum, and welcome members of the public and those who have indicated a wish to speak. I have a list here, and I would remind speakers that you are allowed a maximum of 3 minutes. A bell will ring at 2 minutes and again at 3 to assist with the timing. That 3 minutes is intended to include time for any questions that councillors may wish to ask. So if you anticipate there's likely to be questions, we would appreciate, I would appreciate that being contained within the 3 minute speaking cycle. So first speaker I have on the list is Kemble Pudney from Tui 2000. Welcome, Kemble.
Good afternoon, councillors, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you on this subject. My name is Kemble Pudney. I'm a member of Tui 2000, one of HCC's partners in Waiwhakariki Natural Heritage Park, and I'm also a member of Tui 2000's fundraising subcommittee for the park. Obviously, I'd like to speak in relation to item 13. Tui 2000's main message is that we believe strongly that the benefits of adding this land to the reserve greatly outweigh the dollar return to the council of selling it. Adding this land to the park keeps development back from the edge of the lake, provides visual completeness to this corner of the park. It reduces the risk of wastewater pollution due to system failure or contamination impacting on the lake. It provides additional area, adding to the park's critical mass and habitat. It gives effect to the council's commitment to sustainability by locking up carbon, among many other things. We also suggest that by the time this land becomes available for housing in 3 years' time, the council and developers' efforts elsewhere will make the provision of 50 or so house lots here an irrelevance in the large picture of the housing market. I'd like to mention some of the particular points made in the report. On page 1, it is stated that the recommendation to sell is not considered to have a high degree of significance. For reasons, I've circulated a paper, or perhaps staff have on my behalf, and I've set out the reasons for holding that view in that paper. I don't think that, I think that this issue does have a high degree of significance, in short. Second point, the District Plan Commissioners, in considering the rezoning of this land, required that the Rotakari Integrated Catchment Management Plan be completed before a comprehensive development plan is prepared for this site. Until a draft of the ICMP is available for consultation, it will not be possible to assess its ability to give effect to the Commissioner's intention that it be a primary instrument to protect water quality within the park. Further, it may make recommendations that potentially compromise the sale price. Point 16D appears to compromise the Council's negotiating position by identifying the minimum acceptable price, and also seems to limit the price on both the high and low sides, which I doubt was the intention. Without Council involvement, referring to section 24 of the report, without Council involvement in the development of the environmental safeguards set out in the district plan, the park is exposed to the vagaries of the consenting process, and those safeguards could be diluted or bypassed. Sorry, I mangled that a trifle, but it's with you anyway. In conclusion, though there are technical and process issues around the sale of this land, and some of them are important, in the last analysis the Council can sell this land, but Tui's fundamental point is that it would be much better for the city and its people to add the land to the park. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Pudney. Any questions of Mr Pudney?
Thanks. You said that the sale, that you had a query regarding the resolution and the, could you just repeat what you said about conclude the sale of land within 10% of the estimated? You're suggesting that there shouldn't be a 10% top end cap?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you, that's what I thought you said.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr Pudney. Next speaker is Anna Casey Cox, and Anna also wishes to speak on Whaiwhakariki. Thanks, Anna.
Cool. Tēnā koutou katoa. I'm speaking on behalf of the Waikato Environment Centre, which is a non-governmental organisation with a vision of healthy environments supported by thriving communities. The centre is governed by a board of trustees comprised of considerable expertise, including Catherine Hay, who can't be here today, but she's the chair of the Waikato Forest and Bird. The centre does not support the sale of Waiwhakariki land for the following reasons. We consider that the Beaufort-Miskell report does not recognise the potential high ecological value of the Waiwhakariki land. The proximity to the lake and the potential for negative impacts on the lake is considerable. Placing the 5 hectares or so in the Waiwhakariki National Heritage Park would show that Hamilton City Council is walking its talk in relation to signing the local government leaders' climate change declaration. I hope you're all familiar with having had that signed on your behalf. On page 2 of the declaration, the Council committed to undertake action which supports local biodiversity. Increasing the size of the Heritage Park would contribute to this declaration, which helps to make our communities great places to live. This is from the declaration: work, learn and visit for generations to come. Hamilton City is among a group of cities, including Palmerston North and Hastings, which has the lowest representation and extent remaining of native ecosystems. So we could do a lot better in Hamilton. It's important for the health and well-being of urban dwellers to have natural places to visit within their cities, and Waiwhakariki is definitely one of those. The Hamilton City Open Space Plan contains the action to protect, maintain and enhance Hamilton's green canopy, and a goal to protect and reconstruct Indigenous ecosystems outside of the gully system. So increasing the size of the Heritage Park would achieve both this action and goal. Finally, I'd just like to draw your attention to the sustainability panel that was appointed by Council, who produced a report making recommendations around how the Council approaches sustainability. I understand that the Council staff are reporting back to you soon about that, and the report will be considerable. I ask that you may consider, as elected officials, delaying your decision around this sale or proposed sale until you've considered the panel's recommendations fully, because they're asking you to take a full approach to sustainability, which is actually considering all issues in the light of sustainability. And I ask you to do that on behalf of the centre for the sake of our future generations, because that's ultimately what this is about. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. Any questions? Thank you for your presentation. Next presenter is Professor Bruce Clarkson from the University of Waikato, also speaking on whaiwhakariki. Welcome, Bruce.
Thank you. I apologise for not being that well prepared today, but I have actually only just come out of A&E at the Waikato Hospital, where I've just endured the first experience of the kidney stones. So my paper will be circulated, I'm sure, but frankly, I have just finished it as I walked in the door. Kia ora tātou. Your Honour and elected members, thank you for the opportunity to speak on the whaiwhakariki issue. Because I only have 3 minutes, I can't really give you my full evidence base, but please accept that for every point I make, I have substantive evidence. And please do not interpret my bluntness and passion for whaiwhakariki as disrespect. I'm relying on 35 years professional experience, research, track record, and specialist expertise in urban ecology for which I am nationally and internationally recognised. While the staff report accurately shows continually shifting ground the community acting in good faith has had to tolerate, I am unable to support the central thesis of the staff report and consider it unbalanced and based on a source report which is deficient in terms of its understanding of hydrology of the lake and its catchment and of ecological significance assessment. The hydrological data does not cover off groundwater and overland flow adequately, nor provide mitigation consistent with the magnitude of subdivision impacts on the adjoining park. The ecological significance assessment is illogical and out of step with modern approaches in not addressing the potential value of the site once restored, nor the contribution possible to climate change mitigation via carbon sequestration. It is plainly evident, just look at the map, how this land can buffer and enhance the site and the lake. It is catchment management 101. The area could soon be an oasis of green space in our strongly growing city. The report also sidesteps the issue of an integrated catchment management plan not yet even in draft, and particularly whether the fact the integrated catchment management plan covers all crucial aspects of the catchment. The reason WAG supported the smart subdivision was that the council and the partners would have had a direct influence on mitigating impact and providing a sustainable solution. Once that option was shelved, our position essentially became one of back to the beginning, i.e. the land which was originally open space should be reunited with the original whole for open space. We are, through long experience, cynical of relying on the vagaries of the planning framework, of hearings through the district plan that steps will be taken. Having a plan and the required monitoring to ensure implementation are two different things, as Dr. Marie Brown and I and others have documented in a series of published peer review papers. After all, with this planning framework, New Zealand's overall water quality has been seriously degraded, and we are still arguing over wadeable versus swimmable. We keep saying we're going to improve things, but holding our foot on the brakes. The emperor has no clothes. This is public land, and it should stay that way. I am not ideologically opposed to disposal of public assets, but the significance and important mitigation prospects of the site and its contribution to future generations definitely warrant protection. Retention of the land is supported by Waikato Tainui, and an email will be tabled to that accord, I believe, later. To conclude, Hamilton City Council seems to me to be losing its way generally on sustainability and environmental matters. The Environmental Sustainability Leaders Forum, of which I am a member, has ceased functioning. The Sustainability Review has been sat on. The staff with expertise in these areas has been reduced. The Local Government Leaders Declaration has been signed, requiring ambitious and urgent policy action, but without evidence of an implementation plan. While fiscal conservatism can be used as a justification, there needs to be a balance, and short-term decision-making should not seriously prejudice future opportunities or leave a problem for the next generation. I mean no disrespect, I say that sincerely. This is not personal, but Hamilton City Council's supporters are progressively being turned into adversaries. It's time for a change in approach. We need a visionary approach which understands the difference between short-term, cyclical decision-making and values-based, intergenerational, joined-up thinking. For every one of the hard-engineered infrastructure projects of our developing city, we need adequate mitigation to achieve sustainability in all its guises, social, economic, cultural and environmental, and a fundamental recognition of natural capital on which all other forms of capital rely. Above all, an approach that brings partners, iwi and the community with it. Here is one significant step in this more sustainable approach and a recovery of trust. Retain this public land and gain the multiple benefits green space offers. Show a real commitment to the local government leaders' declaration by planting trees and sequestering carbon. We will do it willingly and raise the funding to cover the plants as we have done for the last 10 years at Waiwhakariki. Come on, councillors, please, come on board. Come with us, don't work against us. Announce this new initiative at the upcoming June Arbor Day. Thank you, Rob. I do apologise for going over. I'm sincere and passionate about this topic.
Thank you, Bruce. The next speaker is Aaron Wang from Generation 2000. He's also speaking on Waiwhakariki.
Oh.
Welcome, Aaron.
Kia ora koutou. I'm Aaron Wong, the Waikato Regional Spokesperson for Generation Zero, which is a youth-led organisation trying to find solutions for climate change and to mitigate the effects of it. So I will first speak to item 8 and 12, and then I'll move to item 13. Sorry, it wasn't on the paper. Regarding item 8, with waste recovery of 28.3%, Hamilton very much lags behind Christchurch City's 48% of non-organic waste being recycled. 50% of waste produced by household is food or organic waste, and this could also be recycled. Regarding item 12, for a council funding commitment of only $490,000, the $4 million Western Rail Trail is about to be begun. Generation Zero urges council to invest in high-quality active transport, as has begun here. Finally, coming to item 13. In regards to the Waiwhakariki land sale, Generation Zero strongly opposes a hands-off sale to private interests for development. The land in question is still in the catchment for the Horseshoe Lake, and we are not satisfied that the regulatory powers and oversight the council have over private developments would guarantee protection of the sensitive ecological area. Nor has the report presented adequately considered the potential and likely effects on the rest of the Natural Heritage Park. There is a huge opportunity cost of giving up land which could be used instead for a future community amenity. This land complements the entire Waiwhakariki Natural Heritage Park, which is an important public asset for the West and for Hamilton as a whole. The plan to sell this land to private developers is highly likely to create adverse effects for the Waiwhakariki Natural Park. Council must always consider sustainability in any decision making because it is the legacy you are leaving. Council should continue to work with these great organisations as guardians of this land. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. Any questions of Aaron? Right, thank you. The next speaker is Elvina Edwards from Hamilton, and Elvina is also speaking on Waiwhakariki. Welcome, Elvina.
Kia ora. O tēnā rā koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui ki a koutou katoa ko Elvina Edwards ahau. I'm speaking as tangata whenua. I'm no Ngaitahu. My children are Waikato Tainui. I speak on behalf of them. I also give a voice to my mokopuna, and I give a voice to my mokopuna that are unborn. I want to just start off with a quote. Once the ecosystem is destroyed in any one area or manner, it is vastly difficult to render effective repair. The real drive must therefore be to ensure preventative measures. Let's be real, we know that this council is in financial difficulty, and it's financial difficulty actually because of some bad past decisions. They were not focused on long-term visions for this city. We recognise that. Ratepayers do not want to see their money. They want to see their money used well and can't afford increases. It's easy to say, let's get rid of assets like this block of land when you're short on cash. $3 million sounds like a lot of money, but using this land for housing isn't a smart development because you've already got an asset here. Waiwhakariki and its lake, that is going to be a draw card for Hamilton, such as the Hamilton Gardens are. This is essentially a decolonisation project on a piece of land. This is Aotearoa's largest inland restoration project. You can put your houses somewhere else. There is nowhere else the public can go to like this. This council is very focused on money, but Waiwhakariki is about creating a legacy of natural heritage and wealth that restores mana to this piece of land for everyone to enjoy. When it is finished, this piece of wetland will actually be exactly as our ancestors would have found it, this land, before the footprint ever landed on it. For us, this is an education about our past that's coming not from a book, it's coming from a colonial or a colonial history lesson. It is actually living, it is breathing, it is immersed in it. It's about what we decide to bequeath to our mukapuna. Representatives of Tainui supported this land taking on reserve status, and you are disrespecting them by endangering Waiwhakariki, its land, its lake, and its creatures. We had representatives from council come along to our climate march just last year and say all sorts of nice things. You, Julie, you came along and said some very nice things. And we were all there to listen to you, and we heard that. But now we are talking about a real piece of land, not nice words. The real project that your community has spent time and money building up over the years and years. We are watching what you do and what your nice words mean. It is a local body election year this year, and we really hope you mean all the nice things you say about the value of making Kirikiriroa a real community with great quality of life for everyone. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa. Any questions? No?
Thanks, Edwina. Thank you for your presentation. Next speaker is Martin Toop from Hamilton, and he's also speaking on Waiwhakariki. Welcome, Martin.
Yeah, I find it very interesting looking at all the information that councillors have to take on board, all the material you have in front of you to read every time, and yet to some extent this is a part-time job for you. So you've got two jobs. You've got your own work, and then you've got these meetings, and a massive amount of information to take on board. On top of that, the city is expanding rapidly in a big way, and I think that must also involve a lot of basic work on organisation for that. Now, what concerns me is that as we've heard all talk about sustainability and so on, I'd like to see a lot more action to show that you, in actual fact, really take on board the seriousnesses of global warming. Just a couple of things here to illustrate this idea of taking these things on board. If you go to BP at Bombay to get some petrol, you might notice as you go in, there's some sort of advertising thing at the front about the fact that they have solar panels on the roof. Well, I looked at it, solar panels on the roof. Yeah, very impressive. Here at Rotatuna, the BP guy wasn't interested at all, and that had me thinking. I've just heard that it cost me $3,000 to put a bit of double glazing on part of my house. And I'm thinking, do I do it, do I don't? Huh? My son is with Countess Manukau in Pukekohe. And I asked him, I said to him, well, Andrew, what are you doing about solar power? You're making use of it. He said, oh, yeah, we get started on it, you know. And I'm pretty sure that Countess Manukau haven't got electric cars. Have we got electric cars for our city council? We need to show that we're actually doing something. Carbon sequestration is really needed in a massive way. So I think the city council could in actual fact show this by saying, here, we've got trees soaking up carbon dioxide. Okay? It would be really useful.
Thanks, Martin. Any questions of Martin before he vacates his chair?
Sorry?
Thank you, Martin. Final speaker in the public forum is Miles Barker, who also wishes to speak on Whaiwhakariki. Welcome, Miles.
Thank you. Councillor and committee, thank you for this opportunity. I have been a Hamilton citizen for most of my 72 years and have worked much of my life at the University of Waikato in the schools of science and in the Faculty of Education. I therefore simply support in what seems to me a very obvious and clear decision to make what the previous speakers have said, especially Professor Bruce Clarkson. The Whaiwhakariki project is both a science enterprise of international significance and an act of environmental courage and wisdom. It operates on a time scale as great as 500 years, and it signals for Hamilton City a long-term reputation as a place of unique expertise and human vision. A city where the past is our teacher and a sustainable future is at the forefront of its citizens' attention. But ecosystems are never insulated. An adjacent 5.1 hectares insensitively and carelessly administered has the power to contaminate and undermine all the magnificent work so far achieved at Whaiwhakariki. Council, I believe, has too much at stake here to simply walk away from its kaitiaki, its guardianship responsibilities. I trust Council will continue to assume this role in the case of Whaiwhakariki. Kia ora watu.
Thanks, Miles. Any questions? Right, thank you, Miles.
Kia ora.
Thank you for your presentation. Councillors, the public forum part of the agenda is now complete. We now move on to item 5, which is the Finance Committee minutes, the open minutes of the 19th of November, and they are on start at page 5. I will move those minutes as a true and correct record. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Tooman. Any discussion on the minutes? There being no discussion on the minutes, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Item number 6 on the agenda is the Finance Committee open action list, and that starts on page 13. And I just wish to speak before we put the recommendation that the report be received. Item 76 on page 15, which relates to the quarterly ring road. I have some additional notes on that. That the Hamilton Ring Road quarterly project updates have been deferred to the 15th of March briefing and will then go to the strategy and policy meeting on the 24th of March. So that information in the notes there needs to be updated to include that information. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion or questions on other items? Councillor Mallett.
Thank you. It's item 59 on page 15. It's regarding a report on water world and gym business areas, including KPIs with the water world department's disaggregation to be provided to the next Finance Committee. That was supposed to come back on the 22nd of October 2015. I see it's now coming back to the April, I guess it's April 2016 meeting. It talks about the need to do it due to changing trends. Further analysis will be undertaken in conjunction with PwC. Can you expand on what that means, please?
So through you, Mr. Chairman, we've had PwC working with the team just looking at the 4 different business components of the water world and swimming facilities business. The analysis from PwC came in, it was in a reasonably raw form. I've asked for that to be synthesised down and actually just testing some of the assumptions around the use of gyms across the city, commercial gyms, and I wanted to make sure that we had as robust information possible and as robust analysis before we brought that report to council. So apologies for that. It will be to the April Finance Committee meeting. Could you be specific about the changing trends, or is it just the development of more and more gyms? It's around gym use and the types of gyms that are around the city. There was also one other thing that's actually not in there, is just around, I wanted to be very certain around an item which will be coming to the annual plan around water world and the swimming aspect of the business and some of the challenges that we've had there, and just around the assets as well. So just wanted to make sure that was all factored into that, so you've got a full set of information to make decisions upon. Is the gym hitting its revenue targets? It's not meeting the targets that were in the LTP, but as we explained previously, the revenue targets that were in the LTP weren't what we should have had in there. We brought a report to the Finance Committee about this time last year, and we said that we weren't going to meet those. So if you talk about the amended targets, yes, they're on target for that, but I just wanted to challenge the assumptions around those amended targets before bringing that back, just so that we're very clear on what the current state of play is and what the assumptions are on that.
Okay. And is April the next finance meeting, is it?
Yes. Unfortunately, I thought there might have been one in March, but apparently it's April.
Thank you.
Councillor McPherson.
Yes, the item, thanks. The item before that, number 39, the same page, business case for the new structure to extract water from the Waikato River. That's similarly delayed to the one that Councillor Mallett's just been referring to, and it mentions a number of what it says are not significant issues to do with things like fluctuating water levels, I guess, scheduling of plant shutdowns, building consent issues, all of which I would imagine could be foreseen relatively easily if you had a plan there. And then there's an indeterminate time at which it's going to be report back, finished in April, maybe in June or July. I would at least like a definite time that it comes back. If it's July, put July, not a maybe, and would want to know why things like fluctuating river water levels and why planned plant shutdowns, unless they weren't planned, have had such an effect, 6-month delay effect.
Chris?
The project, it's a very complicated project. Like, we don't have any examples that we can follow of what we're trying to do. So we have had some design issues as we've been working through the project. So I was going to give an update in the, later on, but I'll do it now. So we're at a point in time, like we're still very much at risk as a city of the lower river levels, even though it's raining outside. We're dependent on Lake Taupo, and Lake Taupo is trending down at the moment. So what's really important for the city is that we have the contingency plan ready to deploy. So at this point in time, and this is just emerging, so I'm talking on the hoof a little bit here. But we're just been having a bit of a risk workshop and looking how we proceed. And the basic decision is that we have the contingency plan ready to deploy, and we're probably going to defer the design changes. We need some changes to the structure that we've built, but it's too risky to do them now with the risk of the river level changing. So what we are proposing and what we were going to bring to council is that we have the contingency now. If we need to deploy it, we can. When the risk is passed in 2 months' time, we'll make the modifications to the structure in a period where we know that we won't have to deploy it and it'll be ready next year. So those are some of the delays.
Okay, and it's good that you've highlighted those risks, because I think nowadays that they happen just during summer. They happen at other times of the year too. We've had droughts in April and May, for instance, in recent years. What other alternatives are being looked at for water supply, or for minimising the amount of water that has to be taken from the river?
So remembering, Councillor, this project is specifically related to the physical level of the Waikato River. So it's not particularly related to water demand management. It's related to the physical height of the river, which is related to the storage in Taupo and how the energy business uses that storage to generate electricity. So it's about being ready if, and it eventuates in the drought conditions, but when you've consumed all the capacity in Lake Taupo, that we're left to nature in terms of what the river levels will do. And our indication, we've been close, as you're aware, of a couple of seasons, it's gone very close to going below our physical level. So it's really related to that rather than water demand management.
So what you're saying then, adding to the weather situation, is also that we're pretty beholden to the mighty river powers of the world in an area like this. So my question remains, what other alternatives for water supply are we looking at, so we're not always going hand to mouth, hoping that the intake doesn't become high and dry, as it were, or the water level drop below the intake? What are we looking at in terms of water storage from rainwater that falls within the city, from household water storage, all of those sorts of things? Isn't that something we should be looking at hand in glove with this?
So we are doing those things as part of a suite of other things, but I repeat, I don't think it's specifically related to this. If we've, if we have a city with rain tanks, it's not going to help here when when it drops below our intake. We're talking about 50 to 60 megalitres per day of water, so it's a pretty significant issue. Look, we're really confident that our contingency plan will deal with that. Councillors may recall the 30-year infrastructure strategy discussion, where this solution is a very robust solution for the next 15 years, and we've programmed some pretty substantive money in our indicative 30-year infrastructure strategy to deal with a fix as the city grows for the river intake structure.
Fix only for the city river, the intake structure for the river, from the river, but not for alternatives to that. There's an assumption, is there not, in that that'll be always where we get our water from?
Yeah, I think the reality is the single source of water for the city is the Waikato River. We don't have great alternatives in terms of bore water supplies. There is the notion that is in our 30-year infrastructure strategy and our planning of a second water treatment station at some time, and that's in something like year 30 or something. And part of that notion is security of supply and maybe looking for other ways to service the city, but that's a 30-year issue for us. So it's very much in our planning about security of supply in the future.
Thank you.
Just a question to add to Councillor McPherson. You mentioned the risk management program you were going to go through in the next few weeks. After that risk management program, will you then be in a position to set a date for reporting back to us? In terms of this, I agree with Councillor McPherson that the reporting date of May, June is a wee bit flaky in the sense of, getting to a particular point when we may we may be able to set a date of that final report coming to the committee?
Absolutely. I think the intent of the report was a closeout report that would finish the project and coming back to councillors and saying how it went and what our risk profile is. So we'll push it into, the issue I've just talked about, we'll probably push it into the next financial year, but it may be appropriate to come back in May just with an update report on where we're at with that. So we could, if the meeting date of about May or June, we can commit to coming back to council with an update of where we're at.
Okay, that's great. Thanks.
We can record that in the minutes that's.
Yes, and I'll ask for that action list to be updated so that it flows through into the April meeting then. Thank you. All right, any other questions on the action list?
Just to follow up with Lance. Lance, the PwC report, is that available yet?
No, we haven't got the final report yet, Councillor Mallett, but
So it's in a draft form, or it's in a, you're wanting, I think you said you're trying to...
I want the final report, so it's in a bunch of raw spreadsheets at the moment with some analysis, but it needs to be finalised.
Okay, thank you. When will that, so that will be available for councillors to see?
Yes, and if any council...
It'll be a public document?
Depending on how long it is, I'm hoping that it's reasonably succinct, so... but if any councillor wants to particularly be taken through it, I'm happy for that to happen.
Thank you.
All right, well, I'll move that the report
I have
be
a
received.
question.
Sorry, Councillor Forsyth.
It's reference 80, the staff to report back on the impact to surf lifesaving as a result of not receiving council funding. There's actually no date attached to that in the notes. I note that there's a reference to the Waikato Regional Council's annual plan, but given that surf lifesaving, I think it's regionally, received $400,000 donation today, I wondered if we could have a report back earlier than what's not stated.
So you'd like a report at to the April meeting? On...
well, earlier if we can do. I mean, I think the information is now here, and as I said, there's no date attached to the annual plan for the Regional Council.
It's item 18 on the agenda, Mr Chairman. There's the part about the Waikato Regional Services Fund and contact we've had from the Regional Council about that. So if Councillor Forsyth's happy, we could probably cover that off during that discussion.
Right. Is that are you happy with that, Councillor Forsyth? Okay. All right, any further questions on the action list? Right, well, I'll also move that the report be received. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Mallett, thank you. With no discussion, I will ask for those who wish to support the motion that say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Item number 7 is the recommended dates for reports to be presented to the Finance Committee on page 17 and the dates on page 18.
I'll move.
Thank you. Who moved that? Yep, thank you, Councillor Forsyth. Seconder?
I'll second it, except can I just ask a question? We discussed this previously, the Clauden's financial summary, so it's under the heading of offline, so it's down the bottom of the page, and there's a procurement information one there. The Clauden's financial summaries, I was of the understanding that the small summary was going to come out offline every month. That's still the case? That will still be the case?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have a mover, have a seconder. Was it Councillor Mallett, seconder? If there's no further discussion, those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Okay, so now we move to item number 13, which is the report on Whaiwhakariki, which is on
93.
Page 93. Oh, okay. So I'll mention that. Yeah. Just before we start that report, there was a presentation from Professor Clarkson, which was not distributed to councillors before his presentation, and that's now being distributed. All right. So before you present the report, Nicholas and Sean, I just want to signal that I do have a prior request for a motion and I believe also an amendment. So I'll ask you first to speak to the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The report, although coming from a strategic property focus, has been compiled in close consultation, obviously, with relevant council departments, specifically Parks and Open Spaces, a key player here, and the planning team. The history of decision-making around Waiwhakariki has been tabulated on in Table 1. Sorry, I would just point out an omission there. There was a decision made by Council on the 15th of the 3rd, 2012, which was to keep the Waiwhakariki as reserve. And I'll just read that resolution. Council retains the land described in the schedule in its current state, continues to manage the land status quo, and defers a decision on its sale or development until the economic climate improves, thereby retaining all options for future consideration. And the second part of that particular resolution was that Council requests the CEO to report back to the Council prior to October 2013 concerning future options and development of the land. So what subsequently happened was the 24th of September 2013, Council moved formally to declare the Smart Subdivision Land Reserve and include it within the Waiwhakariki Natural Heritage Park, and that decision in turn was reversed on the 27th of February 2014. So my apologies for that omission. It doesn't affect the flow of the decision making there. So since 2003, the land has always been intended for some form of residential development. And there was, of course, that original smart subdivision concept, which was tested in the market and subsequently didn't proceed. And then with the exception of that 2013 decision to vest the park as reserve, the intention has always been to develop for residential subdivision. In 2014, the last time Council considered this matter formally, there were a number of issues that were outstanding which precluded development, and of course those were principally around the provision of infrastructure, stormwater and wastewater, and the zoning that applied to the site at that time. Subsequent to that 29 May 2014 date, those issues have been resolved in the sense that the zoning has been confirmed as residential and the Council has funded infrastructure to go in over the next few years. I would suggest that I think the report is pretty clear and I don't intend to speak at length, but I think it might be worth having a brief comment perhaps from Mr O'Dwyer on planning matters and potentially from Lance on the Parks and Open Spaces position in respect of the ecological heritage of the park. I'm not particularly well qualified to speak on those matters in detail. I would just address another matter that Mr Pudney raised in the public forum, and that was the degree to which Council was required to consult in terms of its significance policy. There is no legal requirement to consult in this particular matter, but I think it's fair to say that over the last, lengthy period of time, there has been an extensive consultation through formal channels and informal channels with the public. We have the Waiwhakariki Advisory Group, which has vested interests, including Council represented, and that's the formal channel for which we get an exchange of views on the development of the park. So I think it's fair to say in preparing this report we are very clear on where WAG, Waiwhakariki Advisory Group, stands in this matter, and I've in fact quoted their entire email to me at the back of that report, 96 onwards. And we're also aware of Tainui's position. Tainui obviously are opposed to sale of the land, and that has been their consistent position since 2013 when they were formally consulted as part of the reserve vesting process. So I think I'll leave it there, Mr Chairman, and happily answer any questions. And as I say, colleagues from Parks and Open Spaces and Planning are here to give specific detail on those areas, and indeed infrastructure as well.
Thank you. Okay, we'll call for questions on the report. Councillor Gallagher.
I'm wondering if Parks and Gardens could also join us join the table. It seems rather unusual that we don't have Lance and his team and the planning people there as well. This is not just a property matter, in my view.
If you wish, although I think the intent is that if there are any questions that should be directed to them, that they are here to answer those.
Well, whoever could I'm just picking up the email which I don't think was in the report. This is just to reaffirm that Waikato Tainui has always supported keeping the public land and making it part of the larger reserve. That hasn't changed and has been communicated to HCC on many occasions, including correspondence from Richard Cox. What sort of interaction have you had? I mean, I know they were a submitter with regard to the reserve.
Sorry, are you asking from a property perspective?
Well, I'm asking also from a Parks and Gardens, because obviously I would assume that the council, the corporate team would have weighed up Tainui's position.
If I can, through the chair, yes, we have been in discussions with Waikato Tainui regarding Waiwhakariki and also the subdivision land. They provided their support during the process in 2013, where we went out and sought feedback from the community on declaring the land as reserve land. And as stated within that email and through submitters that talked in public forum today, their stance with the land being included within the park has not changed.
Can you just say whereabouts in the report that is? I mean, I think it's a somewhat significant piece of information. Where in the report is it? I can't seem to see it.
It's not in the report, Councillor. The reason for that is I received confirmation of Tainui's position only yesterday, the same email that you're referring to.
The problem I have is they have said there's been numerous discussions, and you see the problem I have, numerous discussions, but those discussions are not noted in this advice to Council. Second question I have to, while I see that you have picked up and gone with the Boffa Miskell report, would you acknowledge that there's also contrary academic professional based views, including by a member of our former Parks team, Kemble Pudney, Dr Clarkson, etc., today that you know there are other views apart from Boffa Miskell?
Yes, there are other views apart from Boffa Miskell.
If Council determined today to add and uphold a previous Council resolution to take the so-called smart subdivision area and add it into the Lake Waiwhakariki heritage area, without putting words in your mouth, would that enhance or detract from the Lake Waiwhakariki heritage project?
In terms of the report and the way that it is worded from our stance, if the land is added to the park, yes, it would be additional land that would support the objectives of Waiwhakariki Natural Heritage Park. With respect to your question regarding the Boffa Miskell report, I need to put that into context on how that was written based on clarification that was deemed on the recommendation of that land being subdivided and what the implications of that land being subdivided would have on the park. There has been a lot of work done through the district plan review around considering ways to mitigate subdivision of that land. So I need to just clarify that yes, there are differing views in terms of what Boffa Miskell have presented and what their context was in being engaged to provide that information. And in terms of, addition to the park, from a Parks and Open Spaces perspective, yes, there would be benefits in terms of added recreational space, added catchment to the park, but we also recognise that the process that has gone through in terms of a district plan process, that there has been mitigations put in place to also provide for those values.
I guess the question I also have to Mr Wells, is it fair to say, and some of the older councillors, I wasn't on the council at the time, when they talk about smart subdivision, that's a very, very different concept, is it not, to putting a piece of land onto the market within a current district plan?
Yes, what was envisaged at the time was high density sort of blocks of houses. I'm not sure what the correct term is, but effectively it wasn't a standalone dwelling on a standalone section. It was more of a communal concept of high density blocks of housing, some low scale, some high scale. There was...
A point of order, I'm sorry, that's not true. While they may have been town houses, they were not blocks with more than one family per dwelling. I was there at the time.
Yes, I'm sorry if my description wasn't accurate. What I was getting at was that they were not standalone dwellings on separate lots. They were, it was more of a sort of a community sense. There were particular requirements around stormwater disposal, wastewater collection, cycleways, pedestrian ways, vehicle parking and those sorts of things. A lot of the, if you like, the sort of the infrastructural components of the smart subdivision have been included in the planning regime subsequently, whereas the other sort of, I suppose, the softer elements, if you like, the more communal feel, have really not found much favour in the market.
But to a degree, in Hamilton, we have some good urban development. In Hamilton, we have some urban development that I wouldn't take a cat to stay in, personally. Do we, you know, in the end, apart from the district plan and the scheme, it's really a bit of a gamble, isn't it, if in terms of an outcome?
Look, I think at the end of the day, you generally get what the market is prepared to purchase, which by and large is a standalone dwelling, 3-4 bedrooms, brick and tile, attached garage, smallish section. Now you could argue that the market buys that because that's what the developers provide, but I mean they had to go in hand in glove in some respects.
I'm just, final question, aware of the vision in 1975, the council led by Mayor Mike Minogue purchased this land for recreation and open space. Would you not agree the sale for housing of part of this land to either a New Zealand-based or possibly an overseas-based developer is somewhat different to that original vision?
Certainly it's different from the vision of 1975, but I would point out that since 2003 the consistent message in terms of that land has been that it should be sold for residential development. And indeed, if you look at the signboards either side of the entrance to Waiwhakariki Park, it clearly shows that site as proposed subdivision.
With the exception of a resolution of the previous council, which resolved for, you know, reserve.
Yes,
I'd realise that's for debate.
Yeah,
okay.
That's right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any further questions? Yes, Councillor King.
What's the city likely to receive in development contributions for each section in this area?
So just bear with me
It's
a
about
moment.
1.7 to 2.1, I think.
Yeah, the development contributions have been calculated. They're identified in paragraph 67. This, of course, is an estimate of 1.73 to 2.1 million based on 33,421 per lot, 52 to 63 lots.
So what date did the city first buy this land?
1975.
Was the development contribution, were we taking development contributions at that time?
Well before my time, I'm afraid, Councillor. I couldn't comment.
As Blair, as Blair would know.
There may have been financial contributions, but development contributions have only come in since 2005 in terms of council.
So is there any chance that there's been any development contributions going into this piece of land?
No.
No chance.
There's been no expenditure on this land. It's resulted in monies being recovered through development contributions.
Is it possible development contributions have been used to service the debt on this piece of land?
No.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Yes, Councillor O'Leary.
Just one, and I'm sure we've had this over the years. How many sections were proposed or could be proposed if this was sold?
Between 52 and 63, depending on their size.
And then that includes a mixture of density, so...
Well, at 63, obviously, that would be the smallest number of section sizes permitted under the plan.
Yeah.
52 would obviously be a larger.
And so how many houses would go on there?
Well, that would be up to the developer, but it would be between 52 and 63. Sorry, let's be clear, be between 52 and 63 lots.
Yeah, so, but my question is how many houses?
Look, I couldn't answer that question. I might defer to Mr. O'Dwyer and see if he knows the answer.
Just a
Where is he?
napkin, approximate? Yeah. Okay. Okay, yeah, okay, thanks.
It's roughly one house a lot, isn't it, Norm? Yeah.
Councillor Forsyth.
Yeah, just leading on from that, there's a presumption then that they'll be single-storey dwellings. Is that correct, Luke?
No. They may be two-storey.
Okay.
All right, I'm sensing that we have covered all the questions. I signalled at the outset that I had an indication of a motion that was going to be put, and also the possibility of an amendment to follow that motion. So I would ask Democracy if they could put up the motion. The motion is being sponsored by myself as chair, and that is that the report be received and that council retain the Whaiwhakariki land described in the schedule. So I'm looking for a seconder.
Could I ask for a clarification on that, please?
Yes.
When you use the word retain, what's, as mover, your intention, retain as what? The current residential or?
Current resident retain.
Okay.
Sorry, yeah, I'm happy to add that in if it clarifies it, that it be retained as residential land.
Zone.
Residential land. Council retain as residential land.
Robert would be retained as residential zone.
Status quo.
Status quo.
Yeah, as residential land described in the schedule.
So you're not recommending the sale?
So I'm looking for a seconder for that motion.
So just to be clear, you're not recommending the sale, just to keep it as is?
As it is. In fact, what I'm endeavouring to do there is take option what the staff have called in their report as option 2, which is to retain the land status quo. I'm looking for a seconder.
I think the silence speaks volumes.
Yeah, no, I'll second it.
Your Worship, thank you. Councillor.
I have an amendment seconded by the Deputy Mayor, if that could go up on the board, please.
So we have a motion and an amendment. I'm happy for a debate incorporating both.
Can I foreshadow an amendment?
You may foreshadow an amendment. Councillor Mallett.
It would be exactly as per the staff recommendation, except altered such that D1 conclude the sale of land at no less than 10% of the estimated current value rather than within 10%. So within was replaced by at no less than.
We don't need a seconder for that, do we, until it becomes an amendment? If it becomes an amendment, yeah. All right, so councillors, we now have an amendment. We have a motion and an amendment. I'm happy for the and a foreshadowed amendment. So I guess the appropriate way to deal with this would be to debate the amendment.
I'm wondering if normally the mover of the motion would are you exercising your right as the mover to say a few words in favour of the
well, I think we will
substantive motion?
I think given that we've got a foreshadowed amendment,
right,
it might be more appropriate to debate the amendment on its own.
Right.
And if the amendment perhaps gets lost, then that gives the opportunity to council.
It's just you have rights in your moving.
No, I'm happy not to speak at this stage.
Okay.
What's the foreshadowed amendment?
Are you happy with that line of reasoning, democracy? Yeah. Okay. So as mover of the amendment, I'm happy for you to...
Okay, and I anticipate to be quite, hopefully, a wide-ranging debate and discussion.
Excuse me, could I just check? So you're debating these as separate items?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
On the basis that we have a foreshadowed amendment, yeah.
So just to be clear, the process will debate the amendment.
Yep.
The amendment will be put.
Yes.
It either wins or loses. If it loses, the foreshadow motion becomes an amendment.
Yep.
Wins or loses.
Go. We fall back to the motion.
Thank you.
Yeah. Is that how you see it, democracy?
Correct.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. I obviously, first of all, want to acknowledge the people who have come today, including one of our former parks manager, respected Kimball Pudney, and also a former teacher of mine, Miles Barker. And it is my view that they are representing and articulating the interests of the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren, and future residents to come in this city. I just want to, if I may, respectfully remind colleagues that I don't die in the ditch on every piece of so-called asset sale, and rightly or wrongly, I supported the sale of the hotel shares, Beggs Wiseman, car park building, one or two bits of land here and there. So I don't take a rigid ideological position where I felt that was in the best public interest to actually dispose of those particular assets. But there's no doubt that when the visionary and history, as history moves on, the visionary Mike Minogue, Dennis Rogers, Ross Jansen, our great mayors, when he and his council land banked this area, it was for public good and public purpose. Along the way, there was a commendable idea to look at an eco development which council would drive and develop. But that idea has now well and truly gone, and so you have the clear choice whether it is made today or next month or next year. We still come back to the clear either or choice. One day, is it today or in the future, you will decide as guardians of the city whether or not you will sell to a local land developer or a developer from overseas when a stock market is not doing too well and they want to reshift their investment into New Zealand, whatever. And I want to assure you that a land developer fundamentally is going to be there to maximise return on investment. And that will absolutely contradict the Mike Minogue vision and a latter council's vision in terms of a park that tries to recreate vegetation that the first footprints saw. The first footprints in 1300, 1200, 1400, 1500, 1600 AD actually saw. What was the original vegetation? This council, colleagues, commendably, by majority passed the Hamilton Plan. It is a good document. even I can get enthusiastic for it. I am, however, a cynic of a plan and a statement that is not followed up by the doing, by the action. And one of those aspects is where we want to be, an urban garden. This means Hamilton is green with parks, trees, beautiful gardens and street plantings. Hamilton grows its proportion of green and open spaces. And there's also reference to the Whaiwhakariki business plan of how we get there as well. I believe that to sell this land, and in essence to do nothing, is actually not giving effect to those of us who believe, the majority in this council who genuinely believe in that plan. Another submitter pointed out the climate change declaration from the mayors of this country, of which our mayor was a signatory on behalf of this council and city, and I commend her on that. And that may not necessarily be a unanimous view in this chamber, but I'm one of them, and I was there on that particular day. And I am not a scientist, but there was talking about carbon sequestration, you know, restoring the carbon. All right, I'm not, and as Mr. Barker will tell you, I got 30% in biology and chemistry at school. I was not, so I don't claim that, you know, honestly, it was pretty bad. But I just want to say, what I do get of average intelligence, which I also found out later, of average intelligence, that's actually about planting trees. And it's not about taking existing green space, which was intended by the Minogue Council for public reserve, and chucking it in to a subdivision that may or may not be nice. So I believe that we have, as the majority, and there was good respectful debate in the previous council, the previous council by majority determined that the best way forward was to move to returning this and including this in the reserve. We're aware of the discussion and the debate that has happened, and we're now essentially back, if you like, to the same point. And the worry I have with regard to and I don't frankly think there is a will here at this point to sell, but the danger of actually keeping that option on the table, because the PASCO motion with respect, and trust me, if this fails, I know, you know, what's the second choice, obviously. But I think the danger of the second choice in my view, my personal second choice of your motion, Mr. Chair, is we come back to the same issue, be it this year, next year, 5 years, and under your watch, you have the opportunity to gift this piece of land for future generations to come, or you have the opportunity to kind of pass the buck for now. And I just want to close off. Imagine the decision years ago that the Jansen Dennis Rogers councils made with regard to Hamilton Gardens, and it's worth repeating. Imagine standing in Turtle Lake, near Turtle Lake, looking up, and we've got the Russian Bell Tower, the beautiful canopy of trees, and imagine if they had determined to say, we will take a piece of the Hamilton Gardens, roughly, and subdivide it or whatever, or do something different. We all see Hamilton Gardens now, we get it, we understand it. It's the easy bit. It's easy to raise money, relatively. You know, great, we do that. But we've got the concept, we've got it. Because that previous council and previous parks and gardens of people established that concept. This hard bit is to see what that area of town is going to be like in 10 or 20 years' time. For the record, it'll be totally surrounded by urban with the Rotokauri growth cell. How on earth is compromising this park by selling that piece of land or doing nothing with it going to uphold the great opportunity that you have today, and that is return the last part of that public space purchased by the Minogue Council back into the rest of the park for generations to come.
Deputy Mayor Chesterman.
Thanks, Chair. I urge fellow councillors to support the Gallagher-Chesterman amendment. This is about a vision for the city, about creating a unique opportunity. Waiwhakariki is already recognised as an international project. It will be 50 years in the making and ongoing beyond our lifetimes. It will become another Hamilton Gardens in a different sense. And we know that Hamilton Gardens had its beginnings as the city's rubbish dump. And yet today, that rubbish dump, with all the volunteer work over the years and the investment by this council, is recognised as International Garden of the Year. This amendment, for once and for all, commits an additional 5.1 hectares of land to Waiwhakariki and ensures that we leave a legacy of international reputation for future generations. There is no other way forward.
Do I have further speakers in this debate? Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, my chair's stuck. I'm supporting and speaking in support of the amendment. This has been a long and interesting journey, and the land has been in and out and part of a possible smart subdivision and all sorts of things, certainly in my time on council. And as elected members, we bring with us, when we are voted in by the public, all the skills that we've said to that public that we have and we can bring to the table. We also bring with us life experience. And one would hope that over our time as serving as an elected member on this council, that the life experiences and the intelligence I assume we get when we age, that we would also add that as we grow in this role in this, and as this city grows and depends on our decision making as well. And that for me today has had a considerable impact in the reason why I support this amendment. We're very lucky in this region to be surrounded by incredible green space. And we've got mountains we can climb, we've got bush that we can traverse in, and I've been doing an awful lot of hiking personally, so this speech is a little bit about my personal relationship with green spaces, I guess you could say. And the one thing that I've noticed is that a lot of people are enjoying more and more, and I think recently actually in the Waikato Times or on Stuff, there were some residents complaining because over the summer a whole lot of people had discovered the Blue Springs in Patararoo, and there were thousands of people visiting it. So green spaces are important. They are important to residents of a city. And I also looked on Google Maps, and when you look at the city and you take a journey from south to north in the city boundary and you look for those big green spaces where you can get into the middle of and not be surrounded by residential, of course the first thing that you're going to see is the Hamilton Gardens. And this council has been committed to growing the Hamilton Gardens over the last few years. And we've taken, not only have we taken the residents with us on that with support, but we've, as Councillor Gallagher has said, you know, we've taken people nationally and internationally with us with their various awards, etc. Then when you move through the city, you get to the Hamilton Lake, and I know Councillor Gallagher and Councillor Wilson, I've often seen them over the years wandering around the lake, and look, thousands of people use that every day as well. The next biggest green space for the residents of Hamilton City is Minogue Park, and when you actually look on Google Maps, it's quite small in relation, excluding the river, and I know that the river is used daily as well. The only other place is the zoo and this park that we're talking about today. We heard from staff that there could be a possibility of 63 houses there, and I know we're in a growing city, but really I don't think the sky is going to fall if we don't have 63 extra houses. And how big I've been asking myself this honestly over the last 18 months. How big do we want our city to become? I choose not to live in a city like Auckland because it's too big. I like Hamilton. I like Hamilton for its location. I love Hamilton for its proximity to green spaces and for the fact that we are hugged, I guess, by places like Te Araha, Blue Springs, the Waipa River, Mount Pirongia, and, you know, in 15, 20 minutes we're in the bush and we're in the wilderness and we're in everything that makes New Zealand great. To live in a city that has a couple of those facilities as well is also something very special. And clearly today these people have turned out and they've said, look, that's what we want. 63 houses or a natural environment that when you're in the middle of, you don't know that you're in a city, is far more important to me. And that's why I support it. When it's gone, it's gone.
I have Councillor McPherson, or Councillor Mallett, are you still going to speak? Are you wishing to speak? I had Councillor Mallett first and then Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Rob. I think it's very important to put this debate in a context. Angela and everyone's waxing very lyrical about losing it. You're not losing anything. No one is suggesting at all there'll be any compromise to the existing reserve. In fact, if you go through the staff report, it is riddled with situations where it talks about any impact will be minimal, any impact can be mitigated through planning and proper infrastructure. So that is that's a red herring. That's a red herring, and it's disappointing that we've had a number of people speaking, suggesting that the development of houses for families is going to be a degradation to the existing park. That's wrong. There are significant benefits to the city. The sale price will realise $3.1 million. And for those of us here who are ratepayers, that matters because it reduced the city debt. The city will achieve roughly $110,000 a year of rates money. The estimate is that we'll also receive about between $1.7 and $2.1 million worth of development levies. Now, I know it's very easy for the people at the back of the room to say it's all about money, but sadly, money does matter. It's money that allows, someone's even shaking their heads. Money is what people use to pay for housing, what people use to pay for their food. Money matters. It matters big time. And it's a little bit infantile to pretend it does not. There are benefits to the city, but there are also benefits to the people of the city. Angela was, I won't say scoffing, that's unfair, but she was minimising the benefit of an additional 52 to 60 houses. Those are houses for families. Those are houses for mums and dads to bring up their kids in. That's what our city is about. You're groaning about it. The people at the back are groaning about that. I thought I'd get a smile from them. All right. Now, interestingly enough, people have talked about future generations, generations of the future. You're all forgetting about the families that will have houses that are here now, who are looking for houses, looking for cheaper houses. It's expensive to bring up a family. It's expensive to find homes. To the extent that we can deliver more houses, more sections onto the market, in a small way, it makes a house and the bringing up of a family much easier. None of what we are suggesting here impacts on the existing facility at all. At all. Yeah? Because, at all. And if there is any damage to the existing reserve, it can be mitigated, and if even the small damage that may occur is grossly outweighed by the value of 60 homes for families. 60 homes for families. Now, I unlike the people at the back, I actually respect human beings. My priority, look at you, you're easy to bait, aren't you?
Order.
Yeah, tell them to quiet.
Please, members of the public, we gave...
It is just so...
Order. Just hold. just please, we gave you the opportunity to speak without interrupting. You can at least afford the courtesy of Councillor Mallett, whether you agree or disagree with him, to give his views on this matter. So
I
please,
repeat again,
please.
there is no,
Point of order, please. I do think that Councillor Mallett is sort of playing to the audience and deliberately creating the situation you've just described.
I'm responding to what, I'm responding to what the submitters have given. Okay, as I said, there is no significant degradation on the reserve. There is significant fiscal benefit to the city of the sale, and there is ultimately huge benefit to those 60-odd families that will achieve housing out of this, at homes. Thank you very much.
Okay. Don't expect me to
Excuse me, Mr Chair. Mr Chairman, did I hear Councillor Mallett foreshadow his amendment
Yes, sorry,
when he
yes,
spoke?
I meant to say sorry, and that is why I will be foreshadowing an amendment later on should this abomination fail.
Okay, next, quiet please, quiet. Next speaker is Councillor McPherson.
Thank you. Councillor Mallett's foreshadowed amendment is to flog off the land to the highest bidder is a little like an execution that's going to happen tomorrow morning. But also, when you look at the delay motion by the chair and the mayor, it's like keeping the same prisoner on death row while endless series of last-minute appeals take place, and you never know when the execution is going to take place. And that's how I view both the motion and the foreshadowed motion. I support the amendment because that actually settles the issue. The others drag it on or they kill it overnight. I want to make a couple of comments on the report though first. The comments attributed to Boffa Miskell show to me where it says that the land that we're talking about doesn't have sufficient ecological or landscape value to warrant its protection, merely demonstrates to me that the Boffa Miskell people have omitted reading anything about the Waiwhakariki catchment area, which is not just defined by the current legal boundary. They've omitted reading about the very long-term restitution plans for that area. They are just looking at things in an extremely narrow way. Perhaps they don't come from Hamilton, perhaps they come down from Auckland. And if you looked at it as a desktop exercise, that would be the case. I want to talk also about the way this council's handled this report. And yeah, I think we're all equally at fault there. But when you put this exercise of bringing this report back to council in the hands of a part of the city council who are required as part of their job conditions almost to run asset management eyes over the issue rather than ecological or environmental eyes over the issue, then it's absolutely inevitable that that section of council would come up with the same plan they did for the sale of pensioner housing, get rid of it to the highest bidder, same plan. I think that we dropped the ball by not insisting that a whole of council approach was taken to this particular issue, especially given the history that the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Gallagher have talked about. I think it's time for this council to support the last council's sensible decision, which was to actually make a decision to put the land within the Lake Waiwhakariki catchment area reserve. And I'm using that term not as a legal term, but I'm talking about catchment as in where water and other biological biodiversity areas sort of surrounding the lake all form part of a package. It's time to stop forcing the community to keep coming back, fighting rearguard actions to hold on to what they've got at the moment. It's time that we actually settled this issue. A delay, unfortunately, with the best intentions in mind, doesn't do that. So I support the amendment.
Are there any other speakers in this debate? Councillor King.
I'm speaking against this amendment to put this land into reserve to protect it from commercial development. Our forefathers did just this. They put the ferry bank into reserve to stop it being developed commercially. Now, 100 years later, we are proposing to do just that. develop the ferry bank with disregard for the intentions of our forefathers. This is surely hypocrisy. 2 years ago, the majority of members around this table voted to remove this piece of land from pending reserve status. What's changed since then? Oh yeah, that's right, it's election year.
Any other speakers in this debate? Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Look, I think fundamentally when somebody is elected to public office, there is an assumption that they bring life skills with them.
Can you indicate if you're voting, if you're speaking for the amendment or against the amendment?
If you listen 2 more seconds, I will enlighten you.
Thank you.
I intend to support Councillor Gallagher and Councillor Chesterman's amendment. As I was saying, when one is elected, most people assume that the elected member brings with them life skills and they're not just a one-trick pony, that they're able to take a much broader view on issues. And actually I've seen this because with Councillor Mallett, on occasion, I've seen him try to balance his passion for commercial reality and the reduction of rates and the reduction of debt with his passion for cricket. And that he's able to go from reciting the evilness of incurring debt and minimising rates to suddenly funding quite elaborate expenditure when it comes to cricket. So I somewhat sit here or stand here astonished that it is simply a focus on finance rather than actually leaving something for the next generation.
What about 60 houses?
The other major point, and I'm glad you raised that, 63 odd houses. Actually, if you read most research, what it says is cities around the world need to focus on infill. Cities around the world need to go up, and cities around the world need to stop gobbling up perfectly good land and turning it into concrete and buildings. So I have no problems with your 63 houses. They're just in the wrong location, Gary. Go up and subdivide in the towns you live in. As an aviator, one of the things that I hate more than just about anything is being put into a holding pattern, flying around in the sky, burning fuel and punching air in the sky. But what it does is it enables those below to orchestrate things. When you turn that thinking to politics, what it means is, the timing is not quite right for the landing. We don't want to be seen as actually getting rid of this land, so let's kick for touch. Let's put this into a holding pattern. And that often happens either at high times of congestion, if it's London Heathrow, or if it's an election year. And it's incredibly unfair for those who are passionate about this land. We're playing with them. It's the cat and the mouse. We've got the mouse, we'll kick it here and we'll flick it here and we'll play the game. So that's why I'm supporting the amendment. That's why I do not support the current motion, and I couldn't imagine supporting Gary Mallett's foreshadowed motion.
Do I have any further speakers? All right, well, we're ready now to put the amendment. And the amendment is up on the board. We can't use our board, so we'll use a show of hands. Those who support the amendment, please raise their hands.
Councillors Wilson, Green, McPherson, O'Leary, Gallagher, Young, Chesterman. 7 votes for the amendment.
Those who do not support the amendment.
councillors Tooman, King, Your Worship the Mayor, Forsyth, Mr Chairman and Councillor Mallett. 6 votes against the amendment. The amendment is carried and
So I declare that the amendment
becomes the substantive motion.
Okay, and so therefore we now put the motion, and this is the motion that will be a recommendation to council.
I think the substantive motion is open to further amendments, Mr Chairman.
So can you explain?
The amendment was carried, it becomes the substantive motion, and then the substantive motion is on the table. It is then subject to further amendment, and I have a note that a councillor foreshadowed an amendment.
Okay, all right. So now Councillor Mallett may put his
Councillor Mallett may now put an amendment to the substantive motion.
Well, that's fabulous. But you sure that's how it works?
Have a shot, Gary.
Yeah, I'm very happy to do it. Okay, my amendment is exactly what the staff recommendation was on page 95, except... Actually, you might have it up there, have you? 10%. At no less than 10% of the investment.
Point of order, Mr Chair. I don't actually think Gary means that, because it means that it could sell for $300,000. I think he means that the difference be no less than 10%.
Yeah, very good point.
Just trying to help him, since he is such a financial expert.
And the difference be no less than 10%. Yep. Thank you, Councillor McPherson. Are you happy with Councillor McPherson's rewording of your foreshadowed amendment?
Hang on. The council authorises the chief executive to conclude the sale of the land at no less than 10% of the estimated current market value. What have you got now? Conclude the sale of land and the difference be no less than... No, I don't think... And the difference
the
needs
current
to
market value is 3 million, give or take.
Yeah.
So no less than 10% means no less than 300,000. It's a snip.
Yep, sorry.
I'll buy it.
Yeah, I'll help him.
Okay, conclude the sale of the land with the sale price being no less than. That would clear it up, wouldn't it?
You were a chartered accountant, weren't you, Gary?
So conclude the sale of the land
And the difference be no less than 10%. That probably
at a price of no less than.
I don't think it needs to be different.
okay.
Mr Chairman, just a procedural point of order. There hasn't been a seconder.
Yeah, that's
It has to be up there first. It has to be up there first. No one had anything to second.
Okay, so we now have Councillor Mallett's foreshadowed amendment on the table. We are looking for a seconder. Councillor King.
So, Mr Chairman, might I just, I think the wording should be conclude the sale of the land at a price no less than 90% of the estimated current market value.
Yeah.
No less than 90%.
Well done. I had it right except upside down.
Thank you. Yep, thank you. It's a 90%.
Yeah, we would have sucked the big fat camera then, wouldn't we? That could have been a shocker. Actually, I'll bid on that land.
That's what we told you 5 minutes ago, Gary. Just caught up with us.
Okay, so
Nick, can we just go outside for 10 minutes?
So I now have an amendment to the substantive motion, and that is the amendment there, which has been seconded by Councillor King. Does Councillor Mallett wish to speak to his motion?
Slugs and bugs, Gary.
It's already...
Yeah, I'll just say that I reject everything that's been spoken against the motion, and I implore you to re-listen to what I said before. That it is, I'm one of these people who genuinely believes that humans matter, and in fact humans matter over bugs and slugs and green grass and trees. And the only reason that I tolerate bugs and slugs and green grass and trees is because they add value to humans. To the extent they don't add value to humans, they have no value to me.
Quiet, please,
and
quiet.
that's the same about some other people too. So I can see no point in beating around the bush. Thank you very much.
Do any other councillors wish to engage in debate on this amendment?
It was only encouraged, Gary.
All right.
Yes,
Well,
I think when you're in a hole, Mr. Chairman...
oh, sorry,
you should stop digging.
Councillor King wishes to speak to the amendment.
A block of privately owned land which slopes towards Waipakariki sold this month. Interestingly, it appears that there was no attempt to purchase this to amalgamate with Waipakariki and into the reserve. Certainly council didn't attempt to buy it, and there was no crowdfunding in an attempt to raise funds for this piece of land. And my understanding is that the water from this land sheds across and through and into Waipakariki. It's an equally important piece of land to the piece of land that we're discussing today. So I just question why no attempt was made to buy that, and why there's so much attention on this piece of land, which has never been put into reserve. It never actually went into reserve, and it was it's been commissioned for housing for several decades. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? All right, well, I'll now put the amendment, or foreshadowed, what was foreshadowed, which is now the amendment to the substantive motion, and that is as up on the board there. Those in favour of the amendment, please raise your hand.
Councillors Mallet, King, Forsyth. 3 votes for the amendment.
Those against?
No, no. Councillors Wilson, Tooman, Green, McPherson, Gallagher, Young, Chesterman, and Mr. Chairman. 10 votes against. The amendment's lost.
The amendment is lost, so we now move back to the substantive motion, which was the previous amendment. Can you put that back up on the board, please? I'll leave it there. No. All right, so that now becomes the motion, and this is the motion for recommendation to council. So those in favour of the motion, please raise your hand.
Councillors Wilson, Tooman, Green, McPherson, O'Leary, Worship the Mayor, Forsyth, Gallagher, Young, Chesterman, and Mr. Chairman.
Those against?
Councillors Mallet and King.
The
Carried 11-2.
The motion is now carried, so that is the end of this report.
Mr. Chairman, sorry, could I just ask a question of procedure through you to staff now? I note that a similar decision was made in 2012 and this council changed that, so I'm wanting to find out what the process from staff now and when it is for actually enacting this subject to it being passed by full council, what the process would be and the timeline would be. And it may not be able to be answered now, it may have to be answered at council, but I'm through
So
you.
you're looking at what the process is from now of getting this recommendation to council?
No, and getting it enacted subject to it being passed by council.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Should that come in the report?
Yes.
In the report from this
Perhaps
committee?
that would be the best way.
And,
Thank you.
and become part of that when it appears at council?
Yeah.
Can I ask staff to do that?
I can give you an indication now.
Okay.
Just in pretty brief terms, there's a Reserves Act process that we have to go through as well. So if the resolution gets passed at full council, then we will have to publicly notify that it's our intention to declare this land and classify it as a reserve under the Reserves Act. And then we have to ask for objections against and submissions in relation to the proposal, and then council, it has to come back to council, and then council gives full consideration to those objections and the submissions in relation to it, the positive ones that is, and then makes a final decision then, which will be the final decision for it to be a reserve.
And the timeline for that can be between 3 months and 6 months, perhaps?
Yeah, probably about 3 to 4 months maximum.
Thank you.
So, Councillor Gallagher, you have a question?
Do I take it, the previous process where we went through the reserve, has that virtually expired because of a council resolution that?
Because it was some time ago, our advice is that to be safe on the process, we need to go through it again because of notice of motions and revocations of resolutions and that sort of thing.
All right. Okay, so this report on Whakariki is now complete. I'd like to thank members of the public. You're welcome to stay on, but thank you very much for your attendance and participation in the public forum. We're now going to take an afternoon tea break, so council meeting will resume at 3:35, please.